Question 5. In the town of Lakeville, the number of cell phones in a household is a random variable W with the following probability distribution. What is the standard deviation of the number of cell phones in a randomly selected house? Goodness. Okay, so I was not expecting them to ask this question because it's very time consuming to find the standard deviation by hand. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and do it in this video, but then I'll also show you a quicker, faster way of doing it, especially because this is a multiple choice question and you don't technically have to show your work on multiple choice questions. All right, so first let's go to our formula sheet. Okay. All right, so here's the formula for calculating the standard deviation of a discrete random variable. All right, let's take a screenshot of this and then we'll put it into our notes. Okay, done. Save the photos. And insert. There we go. All right, so let's break this formula down. This formula is saying take each x value, like we'd start with 0, subtract the mean, which we don't know, we'd have to calculate that. Okay. Square the difference. Okay. Multiply that result by the probability. So for the first value, we'd multiply by 0.10. Okay. Add everything up, and then take a square root. Okay. All right. Let me try to organize these calculations. Okay, so we'll make a table here. Let's move this up a little bit. All right, so the x values minus the mean, values minus the mean squared, and then values minus the mean squared times the probability. Oh, goodness. This is going to be a long video. All right, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to find out what the mean is so that I can subtract it from all of these values. Okay. Now, finding the mean is actually not too bad of a calculation. It's taking each x value and multiplying by its probability, and then adding up all those terms. All right, so we can probably do that pretty quickly by hand. Here, I'll use a different color to do that. Okay. So the mean is the sum of the x values times their probabilities. Okay, so that's going to be 0 times 0.1 plus 1 times 0.1 plus 2 times 0.25 plus 3 times 0.3 plus 4 times 0.2 plus 5 times 0.05. Okay. So this equals 2.55. Okay. Now, if you're not really interested in seeing this long calculation, you can fast forward the video where I go over the shortcut. All right, but now that we have that, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract this amount from each of these values. All right, so we'll do 0 minus 2.55, 1 minus 2.55, etc. All right, so I've already done these calculations on my calculator, and so the first one is going to be minus 2.55, minus 1.55, minus 0.55, 0.45, 1.45, and then 2.45. Okay. All right, so now that we've subtracted the mean, the next thing to do is square the result. So we're going to square this number, write it over here. Then we're going to square this number, write it over here, so on and so forth. All right. So negative 2.55 squared is 6.5025, and then here are all the other values. 2.4025, 0.3025, 0.2025, 2.1025, and 6.0025. Whew. All right, now that we've squared everything, the next thing to do is take the result and multiply by its corresponding probability. Okay, so I'm going to take the first value here, multiply it by 10%. And then we're going to take the next value here, multiply that by 10%. And then this one's going to get multiplied by 0.25, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to do all this off screen on my calculator, and then I'll tell you what those products are going to be. We'll write it in here. All right, so the first one, 6.5, etc. times 0.1 is 0.65025, right? Just move the decimal place over 1, okay? The next one, that's going to be this number times that probability. It's 0.24025. All right, next it's this times that probability, 0.075625. If you've, stayed with me, during this video, hopefully you realize now why it's not a good idea to calculate this by hand. You'd spend like half the test just on this one problem. Okay, now we're going to multiply this value, which is the fourth one, times the fourth probability, 0.06075. All right, and then the fifth value times the fifth probability, 0.4205. Finally, the last value times the last probability, and we get 0.300125. Whew. All right, so that's pretty much all the hard work. Now we have to add everything up. Okay, so I'll write the total here. So the sum of that last column is 1.7475. Okay, and then the final thing we need to do is we need to take that sum and we need to square root it. Okay, and so the square root of 1.7, etc., is 1.32193, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So square rooting that gives 1.32, and I'm really happy to see that choice A says 1.32. All right, now I promised a faster way of figuring this out, and here's how you would do it. If you just want to quickly get the answer and you don't need to show work, which for a multiple choice question, you don't have to show your work. Okay, here's what you do. Type the values into list 1 on your calculator, type the probabilities into list 2 on your calculator, and then just hit or run the function 1var stats, right? And that'll give you the answer much faster than doing all these calculations here in blue and red.